welcome to the Expat Pod. My name is James, your host, and today I have my friend Andre, who I've known since 2012 or 2011 when you went to Liverpool. No, 2013.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, 14, where he came for a year to study in Liverpool when we did the same modules, but also we played volleyball together. So, Andre, where have you lived or where haven't you lived is probably a better question.
Hey everybody. Well, first of all, thank you for the invite, James. Very happy to be here. So far I have lived in 9 cities, 4 countries. I'm originally from Brazil, so of course I did live in Brazil, but I also lived in the States, England, and now I'm currently living in Barcelona, Spain. Um, and also I have traveled a little bit. So far I have been to 35 countries, and hoping to hit the milestone of 40 in the next few months.
So, welcome to section one of the podcast, all about getting there. So, Andre, you've obviously been to so many different places. It's quite a long list, but let's maybe go chronologically. So, I believe you went from Brazil to the UK first for your studies, where we met. How did you go about getting there?
Cool. So England was the first country that I moved to from Brazil. That one I was in college, so I have a bachelor in mechanical engineering, and I did my year abroad in England. At the time, the Brazilian government was offering scholarships to travel, and of course study abroad, and I was able to get one of those. So during college, I was a sponsor, and then I moved to Liverpool, England, where I studied mechanical engineering and also played volleyball with James.
And studied as well.
Yeah, of course. I did study a lot. But what you remember mainly are the fun moments and the happy moments, and those
Yeah.
were playing volleyball and hanging out with friends.
Yeah, and eating chicken hearts in your lounge.
Indeed. I miss Liverpool. It was definitely a very, very interesting city.
Yeah, so obviously that was only for a year, and just the scholarship helped. But was there anything you needed to do before you moved to Liverpool? Was like a checklist you had to do, or accommodation to
Right.
find?
I mean, I guess when you're in college, it's all about experimenting, right? So at that time, I had to choose which country I was going to. Before going to England, I was offered a scholarship to Australia, but at that moment in my life, I really wanted to go to England, not Australia, so I refused that one, waited a little bit longer, and then I went to England. So I think like the first thing that you need to do is what is your objective, or what kind of culture you want to be part of, right? And for me, it was the British culture. So with that in mind, I focused my goal in, first of all, improving my English, of course, because at the time wasn't fluent enough, and then researching options. So what kind of scholarships are available, or what kind of ways can I go to that said country? I choose a scholarship to do during my college period, so I could learn and also enjoy the culture. But of course, you have other opportunities, such as you can work for 6 months, or you can do like a language course or something in that country. So of course, the options are many.
Oh wow, I didn't realize you had the chance to turn down Australia. There must be a when it was set not to have
Yeah,
had.
I don't regret refusing, but of course, I really want to go to Australia. I never have been. It's such an amazing country. And at that time, I got a scholarship for like a year and a half. And I said
Oh
no.
wow.
But then 6 months later, I got the scholarship to England for a year, which was really amazing. And of course, changed my life in so many ways that I'm very happy I did that.
Wonderful. And then let's cycle a bit forward now to your second kind of relocation. So you gone back to Brazil to finish your education, and then you moved to America or the US?
Kinda. So I moved back to Brazil, and then I worked for about a year and a half. And then within my company, since the beginning, I was like, I want to, move abroad. I want to work in different cultures and so on. And after a year and a half working in this company, I got this opportunity to move to Florida. And I was working in this project in Florida for about a year, a little bit over a year. It was 2 projects, if I'm not wrong, which was quite interesting, right? Because even though the Brazilian culture has a lot of the American culture, it is different when you move to the US, and especially when you work English for the first time. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
studying English is one thing, working English is a different, right?
Hmm.
And that experience was very, very rich in many, many ways, but especially growing as an English speaking person being able to discuss and defend your ideas in a second language. I lived in Florida for about a year and a half, or a little bit less than a year and a half. Then I moved to Minnesota, where I lived in St. Paul. And later on, I moved to Missouri. So I lived in three states in the US.
Oh
In
wow.
total, it was like I think 3 years and a half, 4 years in total. I don't remember correctly like how long was everything, but I could experience a little bit of the different cultures that you have inside the U.S. And it is true when they say that every state is different, and the people are different, and how they communicate, how they interact is different.
Well, yeah, you say every state's different, but the states are, there's most states alone are bigger than the UK. I think New York is bigger than England or something, and in England, every city is a different culture. So yeah,
So,
expecting every state to be a
yeah,
country.
and to be honest, like before I moved there, I thought, wow, this is bullshit. It's the same country, it's the same language, it's gonna be basically the same. No, and then you're in Florida, and then you move to Minnesota. Wow, that's a big difference. But nevertheless, it's quite interesting for you to experience both worlds, right? And I did learn a lot about myself and about the things that I am into or not into, and that helped me make my decision later on to move to Spain. That would be the next country that you would be asking. And the
Hmm.
reason why I moved to Spain was because here I'm taking my master's in business administration, my MBA, right? And I had the option between applying to MBA in the US and in Europe. And of course, you have like some major schools in the US that are the brand is quite strong, and most people end up applying to them because the brand it's very interesting. Because I was living in US for the past 4 years up to the moment, I discovered about myself that I didn't want to live in the US anymore. So for me, it was
Yeah.
much easier to make the decision. Okay, cool. I want to live back again in Europe, and for that reason, I applied here to YESI, and I got accepted, and I'm very happy to have chosen to move to Barcelona.
Amazing. And then, so your MBA, like, I guess, is quite an important question. How did you go about, like, first of all, finding the school, and then the application process, and then did you need anything before you moved over, like
Right.
your accommodation and things as
So
well?
I think of course, our MBA in this level is a little bit different than others, just because you have so many options, right? You have so many great schools in different countries. Most of the big names are in the US, but you have big names here in Europe, such as YESI, LBS, INSEAD, and so on. Um, but for me, I was making a choice in terms of what is best for those 2 years and for the future, of course, but also the 2 years of the MBA that I'm gonna be living on. For example, for me, living 2 years in Boston wasn't necessarily ideal. But for me, living 2 years in Barcelona or London or Paris would be much better. So of course, everyone has different priorities, has different goals, and they should respect that. So I think that the first step is actually identify what is important and not what people say. So that was definitely the first step, and the second step is definitely, are you gonna adapt to the culture? Are you interested in that culture? If you don't like the American culture, maybe the US is not the best option for you. If you don't like the British culture, you know, LBS is not for you, or the Spanish culture, ES is not for you. So I think it's very important for you to identify. Okay, cool. I have 2 years of my life where I'm gonna be learning a lot. I'm gonna meet incredible people. I'm gonna travel. I'm gonna enjoy myself. Am I gonna be happy living in that city or in that culture? Once you have that answer, the choices become fewer, and the choice becomes easier.
Great. Well, that's a wonderful kind of full circle of your life so far. Is there anything else you needed before moving to any of these countries, or is it, as you said before? I guess America is probably what I'm thinking about. Did you move with a company, right?
Yeah, so I was working for my companies, so they arrange visa, etc., and all the working permits and so on. And then for Spain, I was the one doing the process, but then of course I had the school behind me, so providing the letters and so on. So it was fairly easy, I would say, for me. But also, I do know for people that wanna work, for example, in the US, and they don't necessarily have a company backing up, is a little bit more difficult. So I would say to any country that you're going to, it's definitely easier if you have a job offer. However, a few countries, depending on the country you're from, it is possible that you apply for like a search visa where you can spend some time
Mm.
looking for a job in that said country, and then you have, a year to find a job and so on.
Yeah, I think being British, when I finished my bachelor's, we used to do as well. I looked at New Zealand and Canada, and that you can go on like a working travel visa for like 2 years.
Right.
Um, Maybe it's a year or 2 years, and all you need to do is prove you have a certain amount of money to live, and after that you're fine. You're in the country. So it's they are ex-British colonies, so it's easier, I guess, for me to go to those places.
Yeah, and I think what people don't realize is that several companies are willing to sponsor your visa if you have the qualifications, right? Of course, if you don't have the qualifications, it might be a little bit harder for you to get a working visa and move to a different country. Then in that case, I would say that looking for other ways than working maybe is better, such as a language course or something those lines. And then once you are inside the country, you can start looking for jobs and so on. Because it's much easier when you're in person than when you're on the
Yeah.
internet and like trying to connect over phone or over email and so on, right? So I would say if you have the qualifications, honestly, apply for jobs and so on. And then the visa you're gonna figure out that's not gonna be a massive problem if you have a job. If you don't have the qualifications, most likely it would be better to find other ways.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's a great kind of end to section one of how to get to different places. Thank you, Andre, and we'll see you all for section two.
All right.
Hey, so welcome back to section two of the podcast, all about being there, which is, I guess, what I want to achieve from this section is understanding your first impressions of each of the countries, what the cultural differences were like in each place, and anything in particular you loved or hated about either of the many places you've lived now. So let's again start chronologically. Let's go back to Liverpool, which is the best city in the world, right? And find out what are your first impressions. I guess the language might be interesting to start with.
Oh, the language. Oh my gosh. I mean, of course, my English has improved over the years, but when I landed in Liverpool, I literally thought I don't speak English. Like I'm not gonna be able to make friends. I'm not gonna be able to communicate because this Scouse accent is so strong and it's so hard to understand. But it got easier with time. It didn't get like easy. It got easier.
No.
So yeah, language in the Scouse region, Liverpool, England, Manchester, and so on. It's a little bit difficult, but I think actually the first thing that I remember about Liverpool was the poor weather, because if I'm not wrong, when I arrived, it was something atypical because it was raining straight for 2 weeks. People would apologize to me. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for the weather. Usually it's not this bad. So it was quite bad when I first arrived, but of course then improved and so on, right? But as you said, Liverpool is amazing. I really remember the city with love because I had a great time. I made friends for life. I remember that the sunsets were just incredible. But the language is indeed something that up to this day I say like seriously, if you think you speak English, go to Liverpool and then we can talk about later because it's definitely hard.
That's a very good point. And on Liverpool, I guess it's where I grew up, right? So I kind of knew about it, and I'm kind of used to speaking the
Yeah,
language.
I mean, one fun fact about James actually is because I remember that you didn't speak this. How can I say? Not this well. I mean, you spoke a little bit with a stronger accent or
Mm,
a stronger Scouse accent back then, and I
yeah.
remember that I wasn't the only one that didn't understand 100% you, because I remember one time we were coming back from a volleyball game, and then we were like on the train. You said something. I was like Jesus, James, speak English, please. And then, Luigi and Joe start laughing. And then Luigi asks Joe, like, did you understand 100%? Joe is like, maybe 70%. So I was like, okay, cool. It's not just me. So,
Yeah, because I don't even have an accent. Or I don't think I have an accent. Maybe it's changed. I have noticed that since moving to Sweden, that I'm speaking up more slowly because people aren't English here. And you need to really change your cadence to communicate with people who have English as a second language, like yourself.
yeah.
And like I can go to you really, really fast like this, and it's super easy. But then you kind of lose the audience, so there's no real point in speaking fast or speaking super scouse. It's not really worth doing it.
Exactly, and I think this is something that I have learned here in the MBA, because in the MBA we have more than 60 nationalities, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
just in my classroom we had 45 nationalities. So many people believe that for you to be fluent in any language, you need to be able to understand any accent, you need to be able to speak super fast and so on, blah, 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 blah. However, if you can actually communicate, defend your ideas, have a discussion in said language, for me, that's fluent. It doesn't matter if you have an accent, it doesn't matter if you don't understand 100% one specific person. Because when you get into a multinational environment, such as the one that I am right now, you realize that everybody has an accent. Some accents are more difficult to understand. Others are easier. But in the end, everybody has a fluent accent, fluent English, right? So yeah. Even myself, when I'm speaking Portuguese, for example, I don't speak as fast as I used to, even though if I'm speaking with Brazilian people, just because I got used to speak a little bit slower for me to be able to have conversations with people that don't have the English as good as mine, for example. So yeah, perfect. Well said what you just mentioned, because that's very, very important when moving to a different country. But this is not something that you can expect from everyone, right? So even though we don't speak fluently the language in that country, some people will make the effort to speak with you, and then things will get easier and easier. And that's what happened in Liverpool. But then later on, when I moved to the US, I was more used to the American accent, so it was much, much easier to communicate.
Yeah, naturally, everyone knows American English more than British English now because American media is so much more popular internationally. So you're understanding the incorrect spelling of words like colour because the American English removed the U and things like that. Only because it was cheaper, I think, to print, which is why they have removed a lot of English letters or letters from the English language. Um, but going back to the language thing, I didn't actually learn to really. Okay, I was always taught to speak slower, but when I then left the northwest, so moved down to the south of England, that's when I started talking more slowly because people from where I was from could understand the accent
Right.
more because they're used to it. And then yeah, and that's now gone another step. And it's very important because I think you're right with fluency. Fluency is not based on if you can understand everyone, because I think that's just not right, because there will always be someone who can't actually speak properly. But and it becomes an empathetic way of someone who is speaking their language to slow down for someone who isn't, uh, a first language speaker of what you're speaking, because that's when you have a deeper conversation. You have the ability to realize someone's intelligence, because it's unfair to judge someone who speaks a second language on their intelligence in that second language, because they're instantly significantly intelligent, being able to I couldn't even do it now. Come up with a sentence or articulate themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with what you've been saying, and I guess the Americans speak a lot slower anyway. So well, usually anyway, from
Usually.
what I've experienced.
Yeah, and I mean, even in terms of the vocabulary, right? I think like you have differences between the British and the American. Not only like color, for example, but even specific words that you use for a
Mm.
given object are different. So sometimes if you learn the American way and then you move to Britain, is going to be, an adjustment, the same way the other way around. But that's all small things that nobody should be too concerned about. Things are going to be easy. You're going to be able to communicate. You're going to be able to work and so on. So yeah, it's not a major concern.
No, I just ask if you're unsure. Like, well, in England anyway, people are pretty nice. So,
Yeah,
and in America, if you ask, hey, I don't understand this,
yeah,
they'll be probably happy that you actually took the time to realize that you don't know something rather than
absolutely.
blindly just trying to figure it out. Um, so yeah, so you've done your first impressions of England or Liverpool. What about the States? I guess Florida. I know there's always that famous meme of Floridian man or Florida man did this, like in the papers, and it's always something very absurd. Is that true?
So I think Florida is a very interesting state, and some news are true indeed. So for example, driving there is a little bit scary for me at least. People have like big trucks and so on, and
Mm.
it's a little bit scary how they drive as well. But I mean, like talking about the U.S. in general, I think as in any big country, you're gonna have people that you connect easier than others. In my experience, because of the type of the work that I had, I didn't
Mm.
connect with that many people while living in US. So for me, it was a little bit harder, and that was one of the factors that made me consider moving back to Europe, because I do consider that Europe, mm, on average, connects better with me and my persona and what I like and don't like. But the US, it is a country where everything is very easy to access if you have a car. Things
Mm.
properly work and so on. So I would say it's an easy life if you have a good job, and you can have a lot of comfort at home. You can have a lot of gadgets and so on, because I mean, electronics are cheap. People buy cars, houses, and so on. So that's
Mhm.
the lifestyle, right? I would say that in terms of culture is a little bit, at least the cities where I lived, it was a little bit harder to find. It's not as easy as it is here in Europe. But overall, of course, it's a great country. It's, if one day I need to move back because of my work, I'll gladly do so. Just culturally wise, I'm more European oriented, to be honest.
Mm.
And then, when I moved here to Spain, that's what I found. Like, I mean, Barcelona, it's fantastic. It's beautiful. It's very sunny. The weather is great. Has Even though it's a small city, Barcelona is quite small. Has a lot of culture, a lot of restaurants, and so on. And I mean, the Spanish culture, it's a easy going one, right? So it's famous for having the siesta time and
Yeah.
so on. Like the work life balance is actually quite good here, from what I heard. I haven't worked in Spain. I only have studied, right? But from what I heard from local friends and so on, is actually really good. So yeah, overall, Spain is a fantastic place. Unfortunately, for my line of work, it's not that easy to get jobs here. So I will be moving to Brazil after Spain, and maybe in the future coming back to Europe. Let's see.
And is that going back to where you're from in Brazil, or is it a different city again?
So I'm going to São Paulo. I never have lived in São Paulo. Well, I did live for 2 months last year. So during the MBA, you need to do a internship after the first year, and I did
Mm.
2 years, 2 months and a half over summer. So that's what I did, and I lived in São Paulo. I enjoyed. Has a lot of culture, great people, a lot of opportunities, and so on. And of course, I got a really good job offer. So for that reason, I'm moving back to Brazil after 6 years abroad. So it's definitely gonna be a cultural shock, because I haven't lived in the Brazilian culture for quite a while, and not necessarily is my culture anymore. But that doesn't mean that will not be my culture soon again, right? So I'm excited, a little bit anxious as well, because I'm really hoping to enjoy and have the best of the time. But I also know that not necessarily I will enjoy and everything will be great and so on, right? So I'm ready for whatever comes with the best, hoping for the best.
Wonderful. And I guess, is there anything else you want to really highlight which you enjoyed or not enjoyed whilst in any of the cities or countries you've lived in?
I think like every single country has their pros and cons, honestly, and I think for every single person it's gonna be different. So it doesn't matter if I say that like, oh, for me, the American culture is not that great or something, or it's not for me. That doesn't mean that for you it's gonna be the same. And the same thing with the British culture, the Spanish or the Brazilian, and so on. So I think if you're curious about a culture, if you're curious about a country, you should go. You should go visit because maybe that's for you. And if it's not, it's fine. Life is a journey, right? So you should be able to explore and find out what is best for you.
A very good answer to the question. And I think a good way of ending the section 2 of the podcast. So
Perfect.
thank you. Hey, so welcome back to section 3 of the podcast. I've not actually named this section yet, which is really annoying. So it's just the review section of your life so far. And I guess the first question I would ask, I've asked all my guests, is if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice when you first started your 6.5 years of traveling abroad and living abroad, what would you tell yourself? Or would you just not tell yourself anything and let yourself explore it all?
That's always a good question, right? Like, if you could go back, what kind of things would you say to yourself? I believe I would give like two advices for me, and I don't know if my younger self would understand, but definitely me too, they do. The first one would be create long-term relationships. That matters so much, especially for a person that travels a lot. For the past 6 years, I have lived in so many countries, in so many cities, and so on, and that means that I created some relationships and then I moved, so I lost those relationships and so on. But the few ones that I created and lasted, they're great, they're fantastic, and I'm really happy to have them. You is one of them. And the second
Thank you, man.
advice would be enjoy the process. Uh, I think I always have been way too focused on getting there, way too focused on meeting the goal and so on, and not enjoying the journey. Today I see that that was a mistake, and that's what I'm trying is okay, cool, I got this great job, and I know that like I wanna be promoted or whatever in 2 years. I should not be focusing on getting promoted. I should be focusing on learning now or enjoying my work at the moment, enjoying my life, and so on. So yeah, these would be my two advices: create long-term relationships and enjoy the process.
So live in the moment,
Yeah.
right? Be more mindful.
Yeah,
That's great. I think
it's not forgetting about your goals. It's just like understanding that the goals will come at some point, and you shouldn't be only thinking about them.
well, it's like the old analogy of to climb the staircase. You got to take it one step at a time, right?
Yeah,
So you have to look at what's in front of you, not what's so far in the future.
exactly.
So, yeah, something I've fallen foul of is what you've said as well is, focusing on the next stage or the next thing and not looking around me like, hey, this is actually pretty great. Enjoy it, breathe, take it in.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's what I've, like you said, been trying to do that in Sweden because I know it's a fixed amount of time. So it's like I needed to really embrace it and be as Swedish as possible.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a fantastic answer.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a fantastic answer. What going back to like, when you've been away, when I guess feeling homesick is quite a thing everyone has. Did you have any coping mechanisms for when you felt homesick or missed family or something?
Yeah, this is something actually funny because nowadays I don't have that anymore because I have been living abroad for quite a while, and I really dive into the culture that I am at, and most of my friends are international. Most of my friends are non-Brazilians, right? So I don't. Sometimes, of course, I miss the food, and then I go to a Brazilian restaurant, right?
Feijoada.
Exactly, a feijoada or a pão de queijo or like churrasco and so on. But I moved out of my parents' house when I was 17 years old. So right now I'm 31 years old. So this has been 14 years. It has been a long time, right? and they live in the countryside of Brazil and so on. So it's not something easy to visit and so on. And I have grew out of that context, right? So my lifestyle today is completely different from my parents and from my friends from my childhood and so on. So I don't have that homesick feeling anymore, but I do remember that in the beginning I did. And the best way is actually find people from your own culture, is speaking your mother tongue, and trying to eat delicious food. So if you're homesick, that's my go-to. Find some people from your culture, order some good food, and you're gonna be fine. And just remember, like, you chose to be where you are, and it's fine to feel sad a little bit, even though you chose that and you're there because you want to be. It's totally fine to feel sad sometimes.
On that, I actually remember in Liverpool there was a Brazilian society, and there's a photograph, and I'm in the photograph with the Brazilian society because I went with Felipe on a night out.
Right.
And I was just like, I'm not Brazilian, but I blended in.
I love it. Yeah, this is something that's I love about Brazil, is that Brazil is so diverse. Like the range of types of people that you have in Brazil is so vast that everybody can be Brazilian, honestly. There is nobody that you would say, no, 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 cannot be Brazilian. No, everybody can be.
It's not just samba and futsal, right?
Exactly.
Wonderful. And what's been your favourite sayings or favourite expressions from each of the places you've lived? So like England and America and Spain. You can translate them as well.
Oh, that sayings per se, I don't necessarily remember, to be honest, like from each one of the places, but I do remember like a few things that I would love to do in each one of the cities, or something unique for me. So, for example, Liverpool was the first time that I got in contact with fish and chips, and I don't like fish and chips. I'm really sorry. I really, really don't like. But that was
I don't
something that
eat.
was, oh my gosh, that's something that's British, and it's not for me. But a good memory from Liverpool, and I think I mentioned before, it was definitely the sunsets that are just fantastic. Going through the port and watching the sunset was just something that I hold very, very close to my heart. And then the US, in Florida, there was something that I did with my friends every single weekend, that was going to Top Golf. For the people that don't know what is Top Golf, so it's basically golf. However, you only hit from one place, and you can be drinking alcohol, you can be eating, and the whole idea, you have like some holes, and then you're supposed to hit them. But it's not like those small holes from like professional golf. It's like big holes, right? And then you have different scores for each one of the holes, and then you compete with your friends. So I used to do that with my friends almost every single weekend, and that was fantastic because we would get drunk by 11 a.m. on a Saturday. It was just great. So that's definitely a fun memory I have from Florida.
And now I guess you're getting drunk by 10:30 a.m. because the water is calm, right?
No, so the thing is, now I don't drink alcohol anymore, so I cannot do that anymore. But I do other things, and for sure here in Barcelona, I have so many good things. But one of them that I love is going to the beach with my friends and staying until the sunset. I guess this is a pattern. I love sunsets, as you can notice. And here in Barcelona, fortunately, I can just in 40 minutes I'm on the beach and I am enjoying it.
But you're on the east coast, right? So I guess you get more sunrises. Or...
Yeah, so you can on the beach, you can watch the sunrise on the ocean, but then on the other way, on the mountains, you can see the sunset.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
like you can
Yeah,
from the beach, it's just not the normal one, but it's just like
yeah,
we
you
go
can
to the
look
beach for
behind
the
you.
sun, and then later on we stay until the sunset.
Nice. Oh wow, that's incredible. Yeah, going back to sunsets in England or in Liverpool, they are incredible because it's a West Coast city.
Yeah, fantastic.
It does make the architecture glisten,
Yeah,
which is one of the things why I also love Barcelona is the architecture is so unique.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, Barcelona is so charming, so charming. It's incredible. It's so easy to move around here. Like, I get a bike and I go anywhere in 40 minutes, less than 40 minutes. Usually it's like 15 minutes, 10 minutes, but like the farthest way is going to be 40 minutes. So, and super easy to walk around, super safe and so on. Highly recommend for people to travel and visit Barcelona.
Nice. I think, unless there's anything else you want to give some advice for, maybe how to find an MBA is probably the last thing I could think about.
So in terms of the MBAs, I mean, if you're looking and you're serious about the MBA, you should create a plan for it. But then in terms of choosing your MBA, I guess it's very hard to be honest because you need to be true to yourself. And sometimes answering questions about yourself, true yourself, is not easy. So my advice would be, where do you want to spend the best 2 years of your life? I think this is what you should be answering because especially when you get like most MBAs, you have rankings, right? So you have like top 10, top 5, top 3, top 20 or whatever. Um, those rankings change all the time. Not necessarily a high school that's rank top 5 is going to be top 5 next year and so on. So if they're like close enough on the rankings, it's very similar, the quality of the education. And you should be considering other topics in your life as well for that choice. So I would just say make sure you choose a place where you're going to enjoy yourself because this will be the 2 best years of your life. And second of all, make sure you're choosing something that makes sense for your profession, of course, right? But be aware that most schools are very similar in that sense.
So thanks, Andre. That's incredible. Yeah, because I've known you for what feels like forever, but it's quite a long time, since 2014, so nearly 10 years. There's so much that I don't know about you, like the fact that you lived in 3 different cities in the US, or the fact that you got offered the place in Australia, and it's like I found it since doing this podcast and speaking to friends, I by focusing on a conversation topic like traveling and how people got to places, you learn so much more about them. So thank you for sharing and being open with me and allowing me to, I guess, have a look into your life so far and try and find some great nuggets of information.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for having me. Honestly, it was a pleasure speaking a little bit, and hopefully, this will, inspire somebody to be brave and travel to a different country.
Yeah, and if you did find something from this podcast which is useful for you, please let us know in the comments. Please share it with your friends who want to travel, want to live abroad, want to do an MBA. And yeah, if you do want to just follow me on this journey and everyone else, maybe we have Andre back in a few years' time, or in a year's time when he's now left Spain. Please subscribe and we'll see how it goes from there. But yeah, thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you next
Bye.
time.